Barak Yahawah, Ba'Hashem Yahawashi, Ba'Hashem Qadash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is "And Think to Change Times and Laws." And pretty much this is title is based off of the book of Daniel 7 and 25, which with Lord's will we're going to read that. But this lesson pretty much is something I've been meditating on for a little while. Excuse me, dealing with the calendar, dealing with the dates, dealing with the small hats keeping the Sabbath on Saturday, and Jake that woke up to being Israelites following the same pattern as the small hats are doing, you know. And for a period of time when we first were in the knowledge, we did follow the Sabbath Friday night to Saturday night because we thought that's what the Sabbath was at the time. But through research and looking into time calculation, we found out through the spirit and power of Yahawashi, beginning with Elder Apostle Tahar, that the Sabbath is based off of the new moon. The new moon itself is a Sabbath, and the new moon, which is the first day of the month, begins to count for the rest of the month, you know. And that's how you know how to keep the Sabbath, you know, because you will just follow the cycle of the moon. And there's a reason why there's a cycle of the moon, because the cycle of the moon pretty much, you know, dictates the time. And the time is broken up into days, it's broken up into weeks, and it's broken up into months. Then you have years. So what you're looking at right now is the original Roman calendar prior to Julius Caesar revamping it. And at first, you know, when you look at it, you know, it's not gonna make any sense to you because it's just a bunch of letters all put together. But when you examine it, you have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Then it starts again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, so on and so forth. Because the original Roman calendar that Julius Caesar was following was an 8-day calendar. All right? There were 8 days to the calendar, which they inherited it from the Etruscans. All right? And then in 46 BC, he revamped the calendar to 7 days a week, 365 days with a leap year every 4 years, which they said that 46 BC was the last year of the confusion calendar or something like that, something along those lines. And this is the calendar that was followed for approximately 1600 years or so, until the time when Pope Gregory the 13th revamped the calendar again, which today it's known as the Gregorian calendar, which is by Pope Gregory the 13th. That was the reform. And in that time, and even back at this point, you know, it's impossible to keep time perfectly, you know, as far as cycles are concerned, as far as weeks and years and all that, because things change. You know, days were dropped, you know, and what we have today are estimations of what time is, because we don't even know what year this really is. According to the calendar, it's the year 2024, the hopeful year of the of Jacob's trouble, but we don't know for sure what year it really is. It could be the year 2000 right now, or 1999, or it could be 2015, or whatever the case may be, because there were times added to the calendar. Now, the individuals that say that the Sabbath is Friday night to Saturday night are basically basing that off of what? The Julian calendar, because the Julian calendar was broken up into days, and one of the days within the Julian calendar was Friday, and another day was Saturday. Okay? We've heard all the different arguments. So it says the ancient Etruscans developed an 8-day market week known as the Nundinum around the 8th or 7th century BC. All right, so the Nundinum breaks down to 9 days. So you had an 8-day week, right? And their 8th day would be, see, we had a 7-day week, which the 7th day was a Sabbath. Their 8-day week was ended off by going to the marketplace, buying and selling and all that stuff. It says this was passed on to the Romans no later than 6th century BC. As Rome expanded, it encountered the 7-day week for a time attempted to include both. And after 46 BC, when the calendar was changed to 7-day week from an 8-day week, you still had some that still kept the 8-day week and some that kept the 7-day week. And they kept both of those calendars all the way up until the time of Constantine, where he reformed it and kept this, the 7-day week and made Sunday the first day of the week, or the day of the Lord. All right, he made it the day of the Lord, given to the Lord or something like that. I forget. Goes back to the word domingo. Okay. So, which is Dominus, which is Lord. Okay. So, moving on. When Julius Caesar changed the calendar in 45 BC, which some say 45, some say 46, the month was known by its original name of Sextilis, 6 months. The number of days in August has changed over time. Circa 753 BC, the Roman calendar consisted of 10 months, the first month being March, named in honor of the god Mars. Because even the days of the month were named after Roman gods, and the days of the week were named after the heavenly host. And the nations, they worship the heavenly host. All right, they're the ones that worship that. That's what the Lord said in the book of Deuteronomy, not to worship the sun, the moon, or the stars, because the nations worship those things. And that's why I said, do not follow or do not do after the manner of the nations, that where the Lord brings you in to receive their land. The next one here is, which, we mentioned that the Julian calendar was transitioned from the Julian calendar to what is known today as the Gregorian calendar, right? It says in 1752, the US, Canada, and the UK skipped 11 days when Britain switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. Now you're going to hear the arguments from these different pundits saying that, yeah, they skipped the days, but they never skipped the Sabbath. The Sabbath was kept perfect all the way from back then till now, from the time of Adam all the way up until now. Which that's not true. Now the Sabbath, they try to make the argument, you think that the Lord will create this and he'll create that and he'll create this, but then he doesn't know, when the Sabbath comes in, and he lost track of the Sabbath. No. The Most High Yahawah never lost track of the Sabbath. But on the earth, man lost track of everything, including time. That's why we don't know what time it is. That's why there's times where, like right now, it's almost, what is it? Like today is the 22nd, which we're in the last week of how about to say August, the last week of April, and it's cold as shit. So everything is off. Everything is off course, just like the scripture says. Matter of fact, let me read it real quick and then we'll come back to this. Daniel 7:25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High. This is dealing with America, all right, that little horn in Daniel 7, different from the little horn in Daniel 8. And shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and they did wear out the saints of the Most High here on the soils of America and in the Americas in general, but dealing with North America specifically. And think to what? Change times and laws. See? So, and they did change times and laws. This is why you have the days of the week and the names of the month named after Roman deities, Roman gods. You have, the Sabbath being changed. You have different feast days that Esau keeps that are not in the Bible, but yet they still keep it, even though the Lord said those are pretty much heathen customs. They claim to be a Christian Judeo, nation established upon Christian principles, but they don't keep the high holy days of Yahawah Bashem Yahawashi. And they shall be given into his hand until the time and times and the dividing the time. So the point is that he think to change times and laws, and that's what happened. Now there's another scripture in the book of Job where it says that the days are dark or something like that. I can't think of the wording, because they change time, and this is why everything is off course. The course of the world is off course. Let's go to Psalms 82 real quick. And 5. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. Why are they out of course? Because Esau ruling done destroyed everything. All right, they destroyed everything, including time. All right, so everything that we do today is just based off of estimations. All right, they don't have, they'll try to tell you that the Sabbath has been kept perfect all the way from the time of Adam. How do you know? Now the Most High himself, he knows, he has a track of how the Sabbath goes, but not man. All right, so going back, it says in 1752, the U.S., Canada, and the U.K. skipped 11 days when Britain switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. Now, when you go back to the 1500s, when Pope Gregory established the Gregorian calendar, right? The days, it was 10 days that were taken out, and then Britain didn't buy into it, so they kept it going for about another 160 years, or however long it was, and then in 1752 they changed it. They took 11 days out of the calendar, right, to catch up, so to speak, or fall back to fall in line with the Gregorian calendar. All right, it says this change was made to align the calendar with the astronomical year, with the Gregorian calendar which the Gregorian calendar provides a more accurate representation of. The steps to the change were: December 31st, 1750, the first day of the new year, was changed from March 25th to January 1st. And when you do the research, which is hard to find now, they say that January 1st was the so-called birthday of Semiramis. That's why they changed it to the January 1st. March 24th, 1750, the first day of the new year, changed from March 25th to January 1st, 1751. September 2nd, 1752, the 11 days in September were skipped. So how can you skip 11 days, and how can you skip 10 days and still be in line with the Sabbaths? It's not like they skipped 7 days. Okay, you could say, okay, well, they skipped 7 days, so they just skip from one Sabbath to the next. No, they skipped in one instance, they skipped 10 days, which was going back to the 1500s with Pope Gregory. And in 1752, Canada, the U.S., and the U.K. skipped 11 days. So how can you keep a Sabbath, an unbroken Sabbath, based off of that? And once again, they have changed times and laws, and they are physicians of no value. Right now, when we go to the book of Genesis, the first chapter, right? Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Now, those of you that have been studying know that this word here, God, is what in English, that comes from, English from the Greek, Elohim, that's what they say. But in the Hebrew, it's Alahayim. Alahayim is plural for God. The gods. In the beginning, the gods, or the powers, created the heaven and the earth. This was Yahawashi and the angels. When you go to the New Testament, it explains how Yahawashi created all things, because he was the first spirit created. This is why he's known as the only begotten Son of the Most High, because he was the first spirit created. Right? And it goes on to tell you what, the earth was void, so on and so forth. But then we get to the 5th verse, and the powers called the light day, and the darkness he called night, which we still do to this very day. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So it didn't say anything about Sunday or Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, you know. It said the first day. Our calculations of the days of the week, days of the month, years are all based off of numerical numbers. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's the case. The naming of the months came during the Babylonian Empire and afterwards, you know, for Jake. But for the most part, most of the days of the week and most of the months were numbered. You know, they were numbers. Now the first month was known as a bib, you know, because that's when, you know, the spring came in. All right. So you had the first day, Genesis 1 and 8, and the power was called in firmament in heaven, and the evening and the morning were the what? The second day. Then you go down to the 13th verse, the third day. You go down to the 19th verse, the fourth day. You go down to the 23rd verse, the fifth day. Then you go down to the 31st verse, the sixth day. So we see that the days were numbered by numbers, or they were called by numbers. They were not called Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All right. Now, when we go to Genesis 2 and 1, thus the heaven and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the seventh day, which the Most High Yahawah deemed the Sabbath, the powers ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And the power blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which the power created and made. Right. Now, the IUIC has an argument that the moon wasn't created to the fourth day. So how can, I forget exactly how they put it, how could the Sabbath be based upon the new moon if the moon was created on the fourth day? Well, that's the Most High's time, because when you examine the days in Genesis and the Most High's days in comparison to our days, they're two different things. They're still numbered the same, but the time or the length is different. This is the book of 2 Peter 3 and 8. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. So the creation in the time of the Most High, in the time of Yahawashi and the angels, you know, it took one day. But in our time, it's 1,000 years. So the creation took 6,000 years, and the 7,000th year the Lord rested. You see, and by that point, the sun and the moon and the stars and all that were already created. And the Sabbath was not established for us until roughly around 1500 BC or so, when the Lord brought the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, and through Moses gave them the law, statutes, and commandments. And one of the laws was the Sabbath day. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. All right. And also he gave, you know, a timetable, and he also gave the high holy days to be kept. All right. And pretty much the days, the months, the years were all determined by the moon. All right. Genesis 1 and 6. Matter of fact, I started at 14. Genesis 1:14. And the power said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. That's why you have night and day. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. See, days and years. Because days turn into years. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. All right. It all works in a synergy. But you have some that try to divide the weeks from the months. The weeks and the months go together, just like the days and the years go together. Just like, you know, seconds, you know, minutes and hours go together. You know, everything works in a synergy, but these devils try to pull things apart and, you know, separate things. They're always trying to put things in categories. All right, so going back to Genesis 2 and 3, and the powers blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his works which the powers created and made. All right, so you have the first day, second day, all the way to the seventh day. Then the cycle begins again. So now how is time calculated? Well, time is calculated by the moon. It's a solar lunar year, or solar lunar years as they call it, or lunisolar years, because remember, the evening and the morning was the first day. So let's go to Ecclesiasticus 46. I got second Ezra on the brain. And is it 46? Okay, no, so like I believe it's the 42nd verse. Either 42 or 43. Nope, 42. Let's try 43. Yep. All right. Ecclesiasticus 43 and 6. He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times. See? A declaration of times, because through the moon is how time is calculated. The evening and the morning were the first day. And a sign of the world. From the moon is a sign of feast, right? Because you follow the moon, you'll be able to figure out the feast days. You know, and that's why you had the different phases of the moon. You know, you have what they call the dark moon, which is just means that the moon is dim. You know, then you have the full moon, which is in the middle of the month, which is when it's at its brightest. And from when it's at its brightest or in its perfection, that's when it starts to decrease to what? To begin the cycle again. At the end of the month, which the very next day of the end of the month would be what? That's when the new moon will come out. A light that decreaseth in her perfection. When did it start decreasing? At the full moon, which is the middle of the month. All right? And then it starts to decrease, because it starts out dim, you can't really see it. Then you start to get the crescent, which means to grow. It grows to the full moon in the middle of the month. Then it starts to decrease in the crescent all the way to the end of the month, which begins, then the next month comes in, begins with the new moon. That would be the first day of the month. The month is called after her name, so month comes from the word moon. All right? Increasing wonderfully in her change, right? Because once the new moon comes in, which is very dim, there's hardly any light, it starts to increase wonderfully, being an instrument of the armies above. Why? Because that is the beginning of the month, and that's when you start your count for the month. This is how you would be able to count for your Sabbaths. This is how you will be able to count for your feast days, so on and so forth, shining in the firmament of heaven. All right, now when we go to, I believe that's 2 Samuel, the 20th chapter. Nope, let's try first. Let's try 1 Samuel. My orthography is a little off today. Yep, this is it. Rakatei Yahawah. Now, we're just gonna just go down to verse 24. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat. And the king sat upon a seat, and as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake nothing, not anything that day, for he thought something had befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. Why? Because the new moon, which is a Sabbath, you cannot be unclean. If you're unclean, then you're just unclean. That's why he thought that King Saul thought that David didn't show up because he might have been unclean. Maybe he was dealing with a woman or for some other reason. All right? Because it is a Sabbath. You can go to Amos, the 8th chapter, and it tells you that you couldn't sell or buy on that day of the new moon because it is a Sabbath, and it also happens to be the first day of the month. Now check it out. And it came to pass on the morrow, right, the day after the new moon, which was the second day of the month. So if the next day was the second day of the month, what was the first day? The new moon. Because the new moon is what starts the calculation for the rest of the month, and that's why the moon changes. The sun doesn't change. You don't see crescents in the sun and all that. The only time you'll see something like that happen is during a solar eclipse, when the earth comes between, I believe it's either the earth comes between the moon and the sun, or vice versa. Because I know that the lunar eclipse, I believe, I just call it I gotta go back and look it up. But there's I believe it's a solar eclipse. You have the earth that comes between the moon and the sun, or vice versa, or the moon coming between the earth and the sun. I would have to go back and look it up. But that is the second day of the month, and the sun doesn't change cycles. It has a cycle that it goes through, but it doesn't change like the moon. The moon has different phases of light because the moon is the dictator of time. All right, and when the night is ending, you see the dawn. You see eventually the sun starts to come up. That begins. That's the beginning of the how could I word it? Because the day begins at night. When the sun comes up and the sun goes down, that's the ending of the day. So when the sun goes down and you see the moon coming up, and the darkness coming in, darkness, that's one day. That's when the day begins. When the sun comes up and then it goes down again, that's a complete cycle of a day, from evening to evening, so you could understand. So the second day of the month was the next day after the new moon, which shows you that the moon is the first day of the month. And from the first day of the month, this is how you would count your Sabbaths. Because if the first day is a Sabbath, 6 days work shall be done. The end of the 6th day would be what? The 7th day, which the end of the 6th day or the 7th day would be when the sun goes down. That would be the 8th day coming in, which would be a Sabbath. The next Sabbath. So you had the first day, which is a new moon. Second day, 6 days work shall be done, right? That'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then the next day after that, which is the 8th day, would be the Sabbath. Again, that would be the second Sabbath of the month. It's very easy to calculate, and the moon dictates that. Right now, you have, when you go and you research, right, is Sunday in the scriptures? Sunday does not appear in the scriptures, but now we know the blue letter goes off, but we also know that some of these translations go off also. And I'm not sure if it mentions it in any of these other translations. I didn't see it. But when you go down to the NLT, right, which shows you the NLT goes off too. At about that time, Yahawashi was walking through the grains on the. Oh, wait a minute. It was another, or was it this one? There was one. Was it the? Just bear with me 1 second. I know there was one of them. Oh, you know what, Salakia? Do I have the right scripture? No, this is going into the Sabbath. Salakia. Let me go to Matthew 28 and 1. In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week. They'll tell you that the first day of the week is Sunday. No, that's not the case. came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. Now, when we go through the different Bible translations, like I said, I didn't see any one of them use the word Sunday, not even the Spanish, which is Sunday in Spanish is domingo. It has here the word reposo, which means to rest. Right? You go to the NLT early on Sunday morning, see? As the new day was dawning. So that's not in the scriptures. This is something they added. So it just shows you that even the NLT goes off. Which the NLT has a lot of good, it brings out things more clear, but it also goes off just like the blue letter goes off. And that's not in there. All right, Saturday is not in the scriptures. Sunday is not in the scriptures. Now you have this argument that the Sabbath falls on a Saturday because the Spanish word for Saturday is sábado, whereas the word sábado just simply means rest. So Matthew 12:1, at that time, Yahawashi went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were an hungered and began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat. Now you have the Spanish Bible here, right? And you have the word here for sábado, which is Sabbath, which they incorporated into the days of the week in Spanish to mean Saturday. All right, but that's not the case, because the Bible was translated into Spanish around the 1500s, right? And the Spanish language didn't come into existence till about the middle of the 13th century, or in the 13th century, which is the 1200s. 13th century, the first standard written norm of Spanish was brought forward in the 13th century by Alfonso X the Wise, who used Castilian, an example Spanish, along Latin as language of the administration. Right? You had the Castilian Spanish, which they considered to be the proper Spanish. Now the so-called Latin tribes, they speak broken English. They speak broken English too, but they speak broken Spanish, because the Castilian Spanish, which is considered to be the proper Spanish, is not spoken by the tribes. Just like the proper English really is not spoken by Jake here in America. Jake speaks like a slang English. All right. Now you have, how did the Spanish language come up with the days of the week? The Spanish days of the week, like those in many other languages, are firmly embedded in ancient cultures of Rome and Latin-speaking peoples. The days were typically named after celestial bodies and the gods and the goddesses of mythology, many of whom had their counterparts in Roman and Greek pantheons. The Spanish days of the week originated from Latin and are mostly named after Roman gods and celestial bodies, with the exception of sábado, which comes from the Hebrew, and domingo from the Latin Dominicus, meaning of the Lord. All right, and those were later changed, but you had Saturday that was named after Saturn, and Sunday that was named after the sun. All right, and Sunday became the day of the Lord during the time of Constantine's reign. The days were named after the planets of the Hellenistic astrology in the order: Sun, Moon, Mars, Aries, which is Aries, Mercury, Hermes, Jupiter, Zeus, so on and so forth. All right, and that was it on that. Now you have origins of the word sábado. The Spanish word sábado comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat, which means Sabbath. In Jewish and Christian tradition, the Most High rested on the seventh day of the creation. Yeah, but then when do you calculate when the seventh day comes in? So Saturday was given the name Sábado as a good omen, and Saturday goes back to Saturn's day. All right, which is still the same day. You go to Puerto Rico, Sábado is still the Saturday of America, of England, so on and so forth. The Spanish language, like many Romance languages, evolved from Latin, and therefore the names of the days of the week in Spanish are derived from Latin. In Latin, Saturday was called Dies Saturni, which is Saturnalia, or Saturn's day, which translates to day of Saturn. So they just gave it the name Sabbath or rest for the same day that the Romans and the Greeks, or the Romans mainly at this particular point, were worshiping in honor of Saturn. And last one here is the word sabbatum, which is the way you say Sabbath in Latin, comes from the Latin word sabbatum, not zibatum, but sabbatum, which comes from the Greek word sabbaton, which comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat, which means rest. All right? But the Spanish language got it from Saturn's day. They just changed it to Sabbath. All right? What you see here in this Matthew the 12th chapter, the first verse in the Spanish. All right? So that's all. The scriptures say, learn not the way of the heathen. Matter of fact, let's get that real quick. That's Jeremiah chapter 10. And 1, hear ye the word of the Lord, which he speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord power, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. Right, so we're not supposed to learn the way of the heathens. These are the ways of the heathens. You know, and we read in the scriptures that time is kept by what? By the moon. That's what dictated time. And even when you go to Leviticus 23, which, matter of fact, let me just get this one just to show you that the new moon is a Sabbath. Amos chapter 8 and verse 5, saying, when will the new moon be gone? Why did they want the new moon to be gone? That we may sell corn, because you could not sell on the Sabbath. And the Sabbath, that we may set forth wheat, because the new moon is a Sabbath. It dictates the Sabbath. When you go to Ezekiel, uh, 46 and 1, thus saith the Lord power, the gate of the inner court that looketh toward the east shall be shut the 6 working days. So if this door or this gate was shut, that means that it was work day. But on the Sabbath it shall be open. Why? Because that's when you will go and worship the Lord. And in the day of the new moon it shall be open. Why? Because the new moon also is a Sabbath. It's what dictates the Sabbath for the month. It's very easy. It's not that hard. Leviticus 23 and 21. I'm sorry, 23. And the Lord Yahawah spoke unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, in the first day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath. Why? Because that's the new moon, the first day of the month, which is the first Sabbath of the month, and it dictates the rest of the Sabbaths for the month. It says, a memorial of blowing of trumpets and holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. Why? Because it's a Sabbath. But you shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. That's it. You know, now you have the ISUPK trying to make excuse that you can cook on the new moon or on the Sabbath, you know, because the priest cooked on the new moon and on the Sabbath, because they had to, you know, they had to do it every day. You know, the sacrifices to the Lord had to be done every day. But Yahawashi came back and said, have you not read where the priests profane the Sabbath and are guiltless? So why would, if they're breaking the Sabbath, profaning the Sabbath, why would they be guiltless? Because the Most High told them to, you know, do this. This is a commandment from the Lord that they had to sacrifice these things every day. But a fire was forbidden on that particular day. You see? But nevertheless, you know, individuals are going to do what they want to do. You know, so I mean, I just found that a little interesting. You know, I just wanted to share that with you. So the original Roman calendar, as you can see here, matter of fact, let me see if I could. You have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. A is 1, B 2, C 3, D 4, E 5, F 6, G 7, H 8. Then you see it starts all over again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Then it starts again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Why? Because the Roman calendar originally had 8 days, because they adopted that from the Etruscans. Then in 45, 46 BC, Julius Caesar reformed the calendar and made it into a 7-day week. 365 days with every 4 years a leap year. So there's extra days put in and taken out of the calendar. And then, you noted that we just went through the history of the Gregorian calendar, where they removed 10 days. And then in 1752, I believe it was, the America, Canada, and England removed 11 days out. So you can't say you kept the Sabbath perfect from ancient times or from the time of Adam all the way till now if these days were taken out. But you're gonna have those that argue that nope, it's perfect. All right, well, you believe that. We don't believe that. We just read in Daniel, which read that again. Get Daniel 7, and then I'm gonna go back to the original scripture that we had, or the other scripture we had in Psalms, the 82nd chapter. This is what the scriptures tell us. And also the Lord said that you are forgers of lies. You are physicians of no value. Daniel 7:25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, is dealing with America, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And that's exactly what they did. Psalms 82:5, they know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. Out of course. All one word. The word there is mawat. Mawat. To totter, shake, slip, right. Because it's not in perfect order. Now, when the Lord Yahawah establishes the kingdom of heaven, it's going to be brought back to perfect order. That's why it says we prophesy in part, for we know in part. So that's pretty much it, If you want to take a look at this, there was a Latin name for this. It's hard to find, but you might be able to find that. Matter of fact, for you brothers that are interested, I'll just post it in the comment section. You can click on it and go to it. But there was it took me about 20, 25 minutes, half hour to find this one. Because I knew it was a breakdown to it, but I just didn't remember how it was. Because when you type in the 8-day Roman calendar, you're going to come up with all different kind of other stuff, that you can't read, But I knew there was a way to break it down. It's just been so long. But Barak, I found it. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. I hope this was an edifying lesson. Till the next time I say, Shalom.